Welcome, everybody. We're back now, staying consistent, and we're on time. Okay, today's episode is going to cover everything about Real Madrid summer, but we are actually gonna start with Trent Alexander-Arnold, who became official just a couple of hours ago. I'll be talking to Sid. I'll be joined by Sid on this segment, and then we'll be moving on into what really Real Madrid's perfect summer would look like with Xabi Alonso. So, Sid, say hi to the audience.
What's up, everyone? Just wanted to tune in to give you guys a quick 30 seconds on Trent. I want to point out when we move on from Cruz, who was a 90% playmaker, Modric, 85, 90% pass accuracy playmakers, you wonder how is Trent going to lead us if we're going from like midfield generals? How can Trent be the new leader? And we did an episode yesterday explaining how a lot of the work is deciding when are we beating the press. And as a team, you need the leader, the cognitive leader, to decide that. And really think Trent is coming in along with guys like Hudson, Carreras, and they're going to replace our midfielders in terms of problem solving. And I just wanted to emphasize that in some ways, when the signing first happened, Loconte, I was not as sure if he would directly replace like the brains of our midfield. But now the more I think about it, I think he is the new brains of our playmaking and build-up.
He is pretty much gonna have to be that.
If Loconte just went mute there for some reason. I'll just take over while you're muted. But
okay,
just talk when you're back, Loconte. You're currently muted. Trent is really, it's a dream signing. It's a dream in terms of like who we get, and usually there's like a player that every team in Europe wants, like 4 or 5 guys every summer. And every summer when you go and get that guy, it starts creating a reputation. Like the rest of Europe looks around at you and wonders like what's going on. Also, Loconte, if it works, we'll get you back in. Otherwise, I don't hear you right now. Otherwise, we will call it.
Can you hear me?
I don't hear it. You know what? There's a little glitch here, guys. Oh, you are able to hear Loconte, Javi. All right, sounds good. You guys are able to hear him?
Okay, perfect.
Keep going, Loconte. Because of this technical glitch, I'll just get out of here. But you know what? You guys know what I wanted to say about Trent. You guys can go here.
Okay, so everybody here is saying that they can hear me. Okay, perfect. Okay, so as Sid was saying, I can just continue on what he was trying to say, that Trent is going to be like one of the key integral players of Real Madrid. He's going to be like one of these Xabi Alonso key players still building out from the back. The episode yesterday, you guys should go and check it out. Goes into way more detail that I want to avoid speaking about here because I don't want a repetition. So you guys have a full-blown episode on the channel already. Go and watch it. It speaks a lot about the efficiency of players like Trent, Dean, and all of that, and how they are going to impact Real Madrid's build-up. So I don't really want to add much to that. Let's not repeat everything. I think that this is a good time for us to transition into talking what would be the perfect summer of Real Madrid. Not every signing, every player in and out is here on my list. I'm 100% sure that is going to happen, but the list has been compiled on a way where Real Madrid has fit certain criteria where the player is potentially leaving, that spot is open, Real Madrid have been previously linked to them, and that player makes sense. So as it currently stands, we can really start with really the first player that we seem the closest to get as the third signing of the summer. That would be Carreras, an ex-Madrid player, of course, and somebody that took a huge leap with Benfica. I'm seeing a lot of takes that are about him where majority of people aren't really understanding. Well, I do understand the premise that Carreras price tag, which is between 40 to 50 million being reported by Marca, and I could not find his wage. That's also something to be very important. I couldn't really find how much Carreras is actually making. So I'm not really sure on that. As for the other players, I'll also get into that and the structure and the way how Real Madrid are going to construct their business and why it makes sense. But for Carreras, I wasn't really able to find his wage, at least something that made sense to me. Somewhere it was like $1 million a year, which didn't really fully play out in my brain, but that could have been the case considering when he was signed and the length of the contract. But Carreras feels like a must. He's a player that you would really want to have on that left back role. And normally on this list, we have Fran Garcia moving out. Potentially, you would want to keep him. Ferland Mendy's injury is looking to keep him out for time being until his contract runs out at this rate. So I don't know how much of a use Mendy would be for Real Madrid. So normally, maybe you would keep Fran Garcia around as a backup to Carreras. Two completely different profiles, but I want the team to have a little bit of structure and different profiles for Alonso to use and utilize, especially if we are going to go into a direction where every competition matters, just like Club World Cup seems to be mattering. Carreras, really a great signing for Real Madrid. Again, the last episode goes more into details about why he would be so good, and also tells you as to why Real Madrid are pursuing him this much and this quickly. They want to kill this transfer off. They don't want any sort of other competition. They don't want a second mind coming into this and interfering with their business. So he seems like to be the player that is going to be joining the team soon enough. And I would assume that this is the sort of business that Real Madrid are going to do before the Club World Cup even begins. So that's a guy that we really want to discuss. The second guy is Angelo Stiller. He's one player that a lot of fans are a bit apprehensive on the transfer. The quoted price of him seems to be in and around 40 million, which I don't think that he's worth that from the films that I watched. But considering how rare his profile is and how well he's doing on the progressive metrics when it comes to his passing, that type of player will always be useful. Do I think that he's the type of player that you're going to sign and he's going to be able to dispatch Tchouaméni or Camavinga or Valverde or players like that? Not really. I think that he's more of like, okay, we need to control the game now. We need a little bit more passing. We need to have a slower tempo. So that's when Xabi Alonso would get him in. This is one of the good things with Alonso, his flexibility. He's the type of player to come off the bench. But I don't see this transfer happening, not without Dani Ceballos leaving the club. I think that that's one of the must things for the team. I think that the number of midfielders is just going to be a bit too high if you have Ceballos and Stiller, even though necessarily they're not the same profile. I don't think that there is something that Real Madrid can get out of Dani Ceballos anymore. I think that this the summer to part ways with him. Transfermarkt, which we know that is an official source for clubs to use. Dani Ceballos is valued at around 15 million, and he makes in and around 10 million a year, but obviously that's gross, so Real Madrid would definitely want to offload that wage. First, Stiller, you would imagine, would be in and around the same wage as Dani Ceballos, and probably about 25 million more expensive, which Real Madrid can definitely afford. But for this transfer to happen, well, I would expect that Ceballos needs to leave Real Madrid first before they go on that nature. So those are the two big guys and most likely guys. Now I'm getting into one outcome that people can read over here, and that is Rodrygo leaving. This is not news. We have heard about this. We have seen that there are times when Rodrygo doesn't want to be the third or fourth guy into the team, and he most certainly has the talent to. He's been out of the squad for about a month now, where Real Madrid or sources have claimed that he has physical and mental problems, which I'm not going to dispute, but I think that there are deeper layers as to why Rodrygo isn't really playing, and Real Madrid having asked Carlo Ancelotti not to call him up with Brazil. I'm not disputing any mental issues that he might have, neither the physical ones. His role this season has been really tough on his body, and it's been really tough even mentally, which explains as to why he's out. But I also think he's out because Real Madrid don't want to decrease his market value. As it currently stands, Rodrygo, using Transfermarkt, is valued at 100 million, one of the most expensive wingers out there, and his current wage is 12.8 million, which isn't really bad, but that's the sort of wage where if he has even Half a good season, he's going to be demanding a lot more. There's a lot of risk there because Rodrygo has a lot of teams that would want to sign him. And Real Madrid are probably even trying to avoid saying that, hey, he's available. They don't want that. They want the upper hand on the transfer negotiations. But they also know that there are a lot of big teams out there that could use Rodrygo or Rodrygo's quality much better than Real Madrid can. Real Madrid already have Vinicius as a left winger. They have Mbappe, and there is another guy on this list that I have to bring in after Rodrygo leaves Real Madrid on my story. My theory so far is the fact that Real Madrid are definitely looking after Rodrygo, but they are looking to move on from him. There's been a couple of complaints from Rodrygo in the past about his position, that he's not fully happy with it, that there needs something more needs to be done with him, that he would like to play either more centrally or off the left, which are positions that Real Madrid have completely occupied with players that are just better than him. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Rodrygo cannot go to a big club and make a world of difference. There are 3 clubs on top of my head that could use Rodrygo and be able to pay that amount of money without any problem for the quality that they would be getting back. And that would be Manchester City. He's a huge improvement over any player that they got out there, to be honest. I think he would be their best player the moment he steps into that team. Bayern Munich, same case again. Even if they were to land or not land Florian Wirtz, I don't think that it would be something that would move the needle for him, because I still think Rodrygo moves in that club. He's their best player. End of story. And the third one is Arsenal. They need a left winger with his technical qualities if they want to up their offensive ceiling. They are a great team of the ball. Rodrygo has shown that he's willing to work off the ball. That's also something noteworthy, but he would definitely want to work less than he did under Ancelotti at Real Madrid, which is one of the major reasons as to why I have him to leave the club to begin with. There's been reports that Rodrygo is going to speak with Alonso, and there's been reports that Alonso might keep him around as it currently stands. So this is me purely speculating on it as it stands. But knowing the club policy and how much money they're throwing around, they're definitely going to want to make something back. And he's the most sellable asset of this club without really taking any step down. If you go on the depth, obviously, but Rodrygo is not a depth player. He's a starter quality caliber, one of the best wingers in the world. He just unfortunately doesn't really fit what Real Madrid are. Now, when you think about like a right winger under Xabi Alonso, right? Let it be like a right wing back on the 3-back or a right winger. I'm going to take Moussa Diaby and Jeremy Frimpong as examples. Both of them are athletic freaks. They're not really the most technically skilled players out there, but they are very, very, very athletic. And that's something that really plays a huge part. Alonso might do the trade-off with Vinicius on the other side and try to keep the right side a little bit more technical, but do you really want a Trent and Rodrygo on one side? That's something to also keep in mind. It's a little bit too weak. Valverde would have to do a lot, and that kind of confirmed that Valverde would have to be the right-sided midfielder at all times, and that's an issue that I also have. So leading with this, now I'm going to go into the player that they replaced Rodrygo with, and that's Nico Williams. First of all, Nico Williams has a release clause that is 58 million. He's 22 years old, and he's making 10 million a year at Athletic Club or Athletic Bilbao, whichever side you want to go. There are some tricky parts with that, especially Basque Club. He's somebody that would want to stay there. Presumably, Barcelona flagged him because they wanted to say face this summer and saying that Dani Olmo was such a much better decision. He showed desire to come, this and that, blah, blah, blah. I think that that was a little bit of defense, just in case that Real Madrid moves on from him. They can call him a traitor, this and that. You gave us hope. So there are a lot of reasons. Another reason is the fact that there's already been reports that Real Madrid are trying to become a more Spanish team again. You can even see from the targets like Dean, Carreras. Those are two Spanish players, potential even starters for the national team. I don't really know about Carreras as a starter, but those are guys that would be on the national team. Real Madrid hasn't really had a lot of Spanish players as of recently, so makes sense. Nico would fill that, a starter for the national team, a superstar there. But naturally, people are going to use, oh, but he's naturally a left winger. Well, yes, he's been playing, but he's played on the right a lot, and he's a player that would fit the mold from the get-go. He's coming from Ernesto Valverde, one of the highest pressing managers out there. And Nico's physical capacities really beat Rodrygo's technical qualities when it comes to Real Madrid and the way how the structure or how the squad is structured. Nico just makes a lot more sense. A lot stronger, really a lot quicker, not even a debate there. And he's a player that's already used to working off the ball in a very high pressing team. So he will tick all the necessary boxes. Great runner. We saw that at the Euros with Spain. He can move into the channels. He's not a player that's solely reliant with the ball. He's a great dribbler if he has to be, but I don't have him as primarily a dribbler with Real Madrid. I think that's going to be the job of Vinicius Jr. So I want Nico to be a primarily player off the ball and to support Trent defensively or support Real Madrid's pressing a lot more than Rodrygo is even capable of doing. So I think the trade-off there is that you're going to lose a menace when it comes to dribbling on the tight spaces, but you are going to get a player that's going to naturally, potentially give you more end product because he's running on the channels, because of his physical capacities. They just outweigh the things that Rodrygo can give to this team. As I said again, if you're going player for player, this is a downgrade. But if you're going for what works for Real Madrid, this is an upgrade. And here I'm trying to build a team. Here I'm not really trying to just put superstars together and see where it goes. Galacticos is something that everybody speaks about, where all the stars came together but didn't necessarily pan out the way how you expected because they chased the names and not the profiles and what fits. The Makelele sale just killed everything off. And that's something that Perez has learned a lot from. And Real Madrid are going to want to assemble a team. Don't forget that Nico Williams is just 22 years old. As I said, Nico is a player that will be making less than Rodrygo. Potentially, you could buy him for much cheaper than you would sell Rodrygo if you can convince a team to pay like Rodrygo's transfer fee up front from the get-go. Then you would end up, let's say you sell Rodrygo for 100 mil, the team that wants to buy him pays 50 mil immediately, and then the other payments are done in installments like every transfer happens. Let's say that that's the case, then you can just add 8 million on top and get Nico Williams immediately on a lesser wage, I would imagine. And if you give him a starting role spot, then you shouldn't really have that big of a problem convincing him to join. Spanish manager, a team that's being filled with Spanish players, a bright future, playing alongside Kylian Mbappe, Vinicius Jr., Jude Bellingham. There is a lot to take him away from Athletic Club. And don't forget that Bilbao have already made a huge signing in Jallo, who hasn't panned out as of last season. But I think that was done in anticipation of Nico leaving. So they have that covered. There's no sense as traitor and such. Nothing of that sort is really going to come out. I'm not saying that they cannot use both of them. I think they can. But if Nico leaves, I think that he would leave in good terms and leave Athletic Club in very healthy financial state. At 22 years old, for me, this is the biggest move of the summer. I think one of the most important ones. I still think that signing a left back and the center back are more important than this one on the overall grand scheme of things. But I think that Nico would fit in perfectly given the profile of the player that he is. Coming from a very high pressing team, one of the highest in Europe. If I'm not wrong, top three. Well, you have a player that already knows how to press. You have a player that is already fully aware that he has to run. You have a player that can run into the channels. We saw him do that for Spain because Yamal was the primarily ball handler of the right. So Nico had to do a lot of running. Whenever he had to dribble, he would dribble. He told you that, hey, I have this capability. You can play with me if the other side is completely blocked. And that's what makes him dangerous. A right-footed right winger, well, not necessarily perfect, but if there's a chance to sign a player that fits all the necessary criteria, a player that you don't really have to sit there and develop a lot and hope it pans out, well, there you go. And then maybe you can move into another direction in another year, getting a younger guy in and molding him in, or see how the team is going to play out. If you watched my last show, you already know that my expectations of Alonso are quite different from majority. So here I'm just trying to build what is really the perfect team for him. And Nico just fits that. If you're going to get Carreras, Stiller for the bench, if you're going to get Nico Williams as a starter, Trent already done, Dean already done, you have definitely filled in the team. I know that Luca is leaving, Lucas is leaving, but we have to also consider that Carvajal is going to return. Fran Garcia, he's quoted at 25 mil, I think, to join Bournemouth, to join Iraola back. He's a player that I would be a bit more apprehensive when it comes to letting go. He's a player that I still see potential on, even though it didn't turn out the way how I expected it at the start. I thought that he was going to be that player. Carreras fits much better anyways as a starter, but Fran would give you that different dimension, especially if Alonso is thinking of having Vinicius more on the inside, which I don't see happening. My prediction is that Vinicius is going to be a full-blown winger under Xabi Alonso, and you want a deeper player in which Carreras would fill, unlike Fran Garcia. Therefore, that signing just makes a lot of sense. In terms of Angelo Stiller, I need to watch even more film of him. I did watch prior to this quite a bit. Very good passer. He loves the ball a little bit due to the coach instructions. But in terms of passing, picking out the angles that he works with, he's pretty good, left-footed, can sneak it in. He can play on the both sides of the midfield, no problem. I have a few question marks, but that's on the coach. I think he needs quite a bit of coaching. I don't know if Alonso is really in a position to teach somebody like Angelo Stiller all the things. So he might be a player that comes in to fill in on the bench rather than to start. I think that Real Madrid has a starting 11 that's more than ready. If they add Nico, which I gave my reasonings, again, his physical superiority to Rodrygo being the main reason as to why making the move, and Rodrygo giving Real Madrid pretty good value, and it makes sense for Rodrygo to go and become a main man in any big team, really, because he would improve majority of them. Just Real Madrid is not one of those teams to give him that opportunity. So with this squad being assembled, I think that you're looking at a team with a coach that can really even get the treble if really they are pushing for it. Of course, there are going to be mistakes made. I don't want to put like the extreme expectations into this team, but this would be a treble-worthy squad. Does it happen? I don't know. It's the first year of Alonso. Alonso is still a new coach. By all senses, he's not a seasoned coach who has gone through 10 plus years of career and now he's coming to Real Madrid. But you can tell that Alonso is immediately understanding the task, being an ex-Madrid player. There are a lot of ties there, so he understands what he wants and he also understands what he has to do. Those are all important things that we have to consider when it comes to making such decision. Rodrygo, again, nothing knack on him. I just want to see him do better than he's currently doing with Real Madrid. I think that there's more potential from him. Rodrygo doesn't really shine on his final pass. Neither does he shine on his ability to run onto the channels. Him having some physical deficiencies just make him hard to fit in my opinion. Looking at the players that played on the right for Alonso previously, Diaby, let that be a right winger. Then you had Jeremy Frimpong, who was the player, or Nathan Taylor, if we really want to go on that direction. All of these are physical first. These are not the guys that are going to be technical first. Those are physical first. And if they have technique, that's just an addition because of the way how Alonso wants his team to play. I'm just simply struggling to see how Rodrygo would fit in. As I said again, maybe you can make the call where you go like tell Vinicius to be more like your off the ball physical player, but that's limiting Vinicius too much. I think that Vinicius is going to be one of the most beneficiary players of Alonso's era. So that just adds more to the theory that Rodrygo is the one to leave. He genuinely might be going through mental and physical problems. I'm not doubting that, but I also think that the deeper layer of all of this is also the fact that Real Madrid are trying not to decrease any sort of value of him if he gives you a bad performance. So they are evaluating things out there. Don't forget that this is the same club that told Angel Di Maria that, hey, you can't actually play the World Cup final because we want to sell you. Do not forget that this is the same club. It's the same administration, it's the same guys at the top. Real Madrid are run in terms of business near perfection. I know that a lot of people like to go on that route of Real Madrid are broke. I don't know where that comes from. It runs every summer because they're not there splashing Chelsea or Premier League type of money in just any player. Instead, they're being very calculative with the way how they handle their finances. Real Madrid thinks 5 years from now, because you have to think that the crop is very young. So majority of the players that are going to pan out are going to want higher wages down the line. You can see that they already have that issue with Vinicius, where Vinicius is demanding 30 million a year, which I think that is worth it, and I think they're going to give that to him. But before that happens, I think that Real Madrid are first trying to conduct their business and then see how they are going to go with the contract renewals. I don't see Vinicius leaving. If Vinicius was to leave, then it wouldn't make sense to let Rodrygo go. But I think that if it all comes down to it, Real Madrid is going to pick Vinicius 10 out of 10 times, simply based on the quality, what Vinicius' profile gives to the club, and the fact that there is a longevity with Vinicius that you might not really get with Rodrygo. It's not about the injury history, but more about the fact that Vinicius is more genetically blessed than Rodrygo when it comes to athleticism. And while he might not be as good or as smooth of a dribbler, Vini is more high usage. Vini has shown that he doesn't really struggle under any environment, really, for as long as he's being used highly with the ball, and that's something that comes very rarely. I don't think there is a single winger in world of football currently that carries the ball even half as much as Vinicius does, which is testament to the old way of coaching of Real Madrid, but also testament to him as a player and everything that he can do. If you can maximize the touches, which I think Alonso is going to try to do as much as possible, then you're potentially getting the Ballon d'Or or the second best player in the world right there. So this trade-off just wouldn't make sense for Real Madrid to do at this current time. If they have to financially make a sacrifice to fill in the team, fill in the gaps, do everything, then it's Rodrygo who has to be sacrificed. As I said, there might be more names that are going to be thrown around, but Real Madrid's business usually gets done very early because they want to have the squad as ready as possible. Not just this year, but for the most part, Real Madrid doesn't just kill the business end of things. I think that Gareth Bale saga just kind of gave the club the ick. They want to close those deals as quickly as possible. Then we, of course, had the Mbappe saga, which was running for way too long. He's now a Madrid player. But unless you're that caliber of player, Real Madrid are just going to try to finish this business as quickly as possible. They are entering free agency as much as possible, but you also saw that they paid 10 million to Liverpool to get Trent early just to warm up for the Club World Cup. That might be something to keep in mind. Club World Cup should have Real Madrid squad already established. We're going to get news about the signings relatively quick. There are news that actually they are also bringing Nico Paz in, which is a player that I haven't even talked about and is the last player that I'm actually going to touch upon because he's the one that makes the most sense. right? Real Madrid, Nico Paz is coming as from an incredible season at Como under Cesc Fabregas. He's really been brilliant. There are a lot of clubs looking at him and being like, yeah, like Bayer Leverkusen were linked to replace Florian Wirtz with him, but looks like Real Madrid want him back. And they have a buyback clause of just 8 million. So it's a no-brainer, really. Nico Paz would come into the team as a filler, because I believe the way how Alonso is going to structure is that throughout the season, he's going to try to play Arda deeper and deeper, and Nico Paz is going to be that player that is going to fill in for Jude Bellingham. And don't forget that Jude is going to have to undergo a surgery right after Club World Cup, and he'll miss at minimum 3 months. Club World Cup makes the most sense for Jude to play, even though I was against that idea at first. I think that it's a good test for Alonso with those players, and it's a good test for Jude to be in there with the group as those are being done, instead of him joining late and then having to play catch up with those players. He knows from the get-go what he has to do, and I think that was the envision. It's not only that they want to win the Club World Cup. Yes, that's definitely an incentive. That's definitely something that Madrid wants to do. They are telling the players that if you win it, each one of you are going to get 1 million as a bonus, on top of Real Madrid itself getting 100 million from winning it as an institution. So business perspective, it all makes sense. But even on the longer term thing, kind of deal, not really thing, it makes sense for Jude to start with Alonso, then take that break where he goes through the surgery. Nico is the player that you're most likely looking at into taking that role upon himself, even though he's not as efficient or as good as Jude. He's a player that can most certainly do that role. I see him doing very well under Xabi Alonso. So Nico Paz is just a no-brainer. He's a player that I'm already counting in. I think Carreras would be the second guy on this list. Nico and Rodrygo, those are the biggest question marks, but those are the biggest trades that could happen this transfer market. So we have to keep an eye on it. The Nico Williams rumors have kind of started to die down. Real Madrid are being used as a pawn in a lot of agents' transfers for their players. We saw with Franco, the young Argentinian. There are news that are coming that his dream is Real Madrid, but they're not willing to pay that much. Don't forget that Dean also used that card, but he ended up in Madrid. That was a bit of a different case, of course, a Spanish player. Here, it feels like it's mostly an agent work. You can tell that Real Madrid are thrown around with a lot of teams, with a lot of players as a name, because those agents are trying to maximize the deal of their players. In terms of Nico Williams, I don't think that was the case. I think that there was a genuine interest, and I think that that interest is going to rejuvenate after Alonso has had probably the talk with the team, which would include Rodrygo, or Real Madrid have received an enticing offer to let Rodrygo go. This is my theory so far. I don't think that Rodrygo is 100% leaving, but as it currently stands, I'm 99% sure that he's gone. And I think that Nico is going to come back, Nico Williams for this, is going to come back into the radar for Madrid to be able to sign, pay that release clause, and give him that 10 million a year contract, which is lower than Rodrygo's 12. So that's a positive end. They're going to definitely try to milk Rodrygo's value, because I think he has a lot of value. Market valuation doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't teams willing to overpay. Majority of the players go for above what they're valued at. Even Angelo Stiller is going above what he's valued at. He's valued at in and around 25 to 30 million, I believe. But the price tag currently put there is 40 million. So you would expect the same thing to happen to Rodrygo. You're seeing lesser players go for 70 to 80 million. Even Real Madrid signing Carreras for 50 million. That's a definite overpay, but that's the market conditions where we are. It's a good business from what's relatively out there, but not necessarily the best of business in terms of bang for your buck. It's not really the case of that. At least not in Carrera's case. You're not going to get that. But you would get that and more with Nico Williams and his release clause. And that release clause is there for a reason being that low. That reason being that it gives straight up money to Athletic Club and their Basque-only policy. It gives them that money straight up, which you have to pay immediately. And it also gives him an opportunity for a better contract, even though if it came to being a starter for Real Madrid under Alonso, being a Spanish player, starter for the national team, I think that for time being, until he gives you that production, which I expect him to do, you would be able to keep him on the current wage before upping it up on the coming years if he delivers. If he doesn't deliver with 10 million a year, he's a player that's movable. He's not a player that you're stuck with. He's not a player that's not. He's not a player that you just won't be able to move on from. Maybe you might have to take a hit on him, but he's not your Mariano Diaz type of player where you're really suffering. You're really having a lot of consequences when it really comes to having those players. And Nico is not that. The risk reward situation there is just goes on a favor of reward. He's very likely to be very good for Real Madrid. He's likely to be an extremely important piece, and him being primarily a left winger over the past 1.5 season actually helps, because naturally he would be the player to give rest to Vinicius on top of things, because profiles do match perfectly well. As I said before, the athleticism, the dribbling, Nico would be more high usage of the left, and he doesn't mind that at all because he can be that damn good. So on the right side, then you would slot in differently. Maybe you try to lock in the right side, playing somebody like Valverde if needed, or you go with somebody like Nico Paz. As I said, Nico is quite versatile, so that's one of the major reasons why I have him as a no-brainer, really. He has a pass in him, he has a last pass in him, he has a shot in him, and he's shown that he can actually handle the physicality of whatever is thrown at him, which is really key. I don't think that Arda is that when it comes to the higher up between the lines positions, but Nico is most certainly that on holding his own, especially on the ground duels. Real Madrid are not necessarily going to be a team that's going to play high balls from the start. And now that leads me to the last piece. To complete this puzzle, we added physicality, we added athleticism, which is the same thing. We are potentially upping, we're not potentially, we are upping the technical floor of the team at bare minimum. Trent raises the ceiling by a lot. So now what are we looking at? What is this squad really missing? And the squad is genuinely just missing a big number 9 who knows how to separate himself on the box from the defenders and can be at the end of crosses. Some keynotes here. This team has excellent crossers. Trent being arguably the best in the world at it. Carreras, really good, especially from deep areas. He's a really good crosser of the ball. And Vinicius, whom we have seen a lot of goals being scored, and sometimes we see even that outside of the boot cross from him that gets into the box. Don't forget the Vinicius x Benzema combinations that we used to get for a very long time. I narrowed it down to 2 cheap players that make the most sense. First one is Ante Budimir, and the second one is Vedat Muriqi. Osasuna and Mallorca. Those are 2 teams that you would have to kind of get into conversations. I'm not saying that Real Madrid holds the worst relationship with them, but there's nothing that suggests that either of these teams are very welcoming of Real Madrid. There seems to be a little bit of hatred in there, so it wouldn't be the easiest negotiations, but those are players that have aged a little bit. Those teams might be looking to move on from their contracts, and this is exactly what you want. Ante Budimir has shown to be a very proficient scorer. He is definitely somebody that's very good at finishing, separating himself from defenders, and he can actually get some very tough shots in. You guys remember Joselu, right? This is the road that we're going with this. Vedat Muriqi is another curveball. He's one of the toughest strikers out there, and really no question about it. His physical presence is just absolutely ridiculous. He's somebody that actually has a very decent technical floor, somebody that you would be able to pair up with Mbappe if you're using two up top. He's very underrated on that aspect. He can bring the ball down. If you're getting pressed, that's a huge plus. If you're getting pressed, he's a player that can bring the ball down. He does that for the national team, and he does it very damn well. And he's one of these strikers that can bully any defender, and you're not getting the better of him. That size, that left foot, his headers, everything just suggests or screams a player that would solve so many of your problems, so many of them. Real Madrid are going to be in trailing spots. Real Madrid are going to be in positions where crossing is going to be the only solution to get to the goal, and that's solving it. Those are not the guys to come in and actually start. Those are the guys to come in and actually be the role players that are required. You need role players. I'm not of agreement that you offload Endrick. He's a player that I would want to keep. He's the player that, for me, should be moved into more of the inside forward from the right side. Alonso is quite familiar with using such players in either side. So Endrick is that player for me, and he would leave that number 9 position to the other guy. So this is how you're really marking the rotations. You have Endrick, still a raw prospect, but a prospect indeed. Great inside forward, but I don't really think that you want him as a focal point. I don't think that he necessarily has currently the IQ to be able to do what Mbappe does as a number 9, where we're talking it's not their most optimal position, but they are going to up the ceiling. I don't think that he's there. There is way too much to learn from Endrick to get there. So I would want to simplify his position. I want to simplify his role. I want to bring in a little bit more experience to the team. And that's really how it's working. But at Muriqi and Ante Budimir, I think both are valued between 4 to 6 million, something like that. And both are making between 1 to 3 million, depending on where you're looking at the sources. Both extremely cheap players. Joselu was on a 3 million a year deal at Real Madrid, and I would expect that the same kind of deal would be given to those players. Joselu would only strengthen your case when you're talking to them. Be like, well, look at Joselu pre and after Real Madrid. He even got that big Saudi contract, which you might look at while you can tell your grandchildren that, hey, I at one point actually wore the Real Madrid shirt, and some all-timers were alongside me too, which is something that Joselu will. I know that Joselu case is a little bit different because he comes from Real Madrid in general, but you have a strong case with all of these guys. You can tell them that, hey, look, you don't have to worry that much about your injury records. You don't have to worry that much about your minutes. We can handle that. You'll be starting in quite a few games, and you'll be coming off the bench in good portion of them, because first of all, there are way too many football games. Look, the season hasn't ended because it ends with club football, with World Cup for clubs and Club World Cup, and then you're immediately going to be swooping into the preseason for the next season. So basically, there isn't really any sort of rest being given. Now we have like World Cup qualifiers for quite a few players of Real Madrid, and we have the Nations League semifinals on top of it, which have their own importance. Too much football is being played. All of these players are going to get their minutes. The whole squad is going to be utilized because, well, normally you expect that you're going to have a tactical backbone with Xabi Alonso, which is going to be nurturing to all of these players, fitting them in the best possible way. And I think that Real Madrid would end up with their best possible record, really, in terms of the profile that they have, in terms of the way how they can play, how they can switch, the dynamics. Everything is working perfectly. Somebody might throw in out there that another center back is needed. I think that Real Madrid are going to give it a go with hoping that Rodrygo can get his form back. Militao still young, so they might be giving him a year. Raul Asensio, he's a player that broke through this season, somebody worth a shot with another season. And there is David Alaba, who can be a good left center back slash deep left back too. He can be good. I'm not saying worth his contract, but good, just good enough to fill in as squad players for as long as you don't give him a starting position. Good at progressing the ball. He would be one of the players that would make sense to have around. Of course, if an offer shows up for Alaba slash Rudiger to move to Saudi, then we would be having a conversation for a center back. But as it currently stands, I don't think there is. And with that, with all of these guys into the squad, I just don't really see how you're going to be able to sign another center back. It doesn't make sense financially. It doesn't make sense from a club's perspective. They're probably going to eye in for a top center back next summer, which would normally be William Saliba. He's going to be out of contract in a year, so they would be able to get him on cheaper. He's the most linked player. But as we see, things in football can move pretty quick. The transfers can really change like this. So really, for time being, I'm not expecting any changes on defense other than Carreras and maybe keeping Fran Garcia, if that makes sense. But a 25 million offer from Bournemouth would be something very hard to resist. Fran Garcia maybe would want to go back and play with Andoni Iraola, or under Iraola, not with, because he's not going to play with him, but play with Iraola, play under Iraola again. He fits that, especially if Milos Kerkez actually ends up leaving and joins Liverpool, which is the most likely team. That opens up the space for the left back, and it seems that Bournemouth are going to be moving in for Fran Garcia. Unfortunately, at least unfortunately for me, I know that a lot of people don't rate him the same way that I do. I know that he's given you a lot of reasons not to. I don't blame anyone. I just think that there is more to be tapped with him that I would like to see under Alonso for a year, if that is doable at Real Madrid, or maybe he just goes back to playing and he might be fully, really, I don't want to say the word cooked, but he might be finished at the level that I expect him to be. He did give you a bit of promise as a player, but nothing that you would go like, okay, I got a transfer fee for him and I'm just I got a transfer fee for him and I'm just going to turn it down. I don't think so. You get him off the books, you make some money off him, especially with an English club and overly inflated prices. All of these are something to remember. Dani Ceballos being heavily linked with Real Betis for very long, and he's actually the type of profile that they really miss. You can see that Pellegrini is trying to shoehorn players like Lo Celso or Pablo Fornals in. So Dani Ceballos would be just a no natural player to be there. With Betis having European football, I think that they would want to facilitate a move like that. Ceballos is valued at 15 million. His wage could be a bit of a problem, but not end of the world again there. I think that he would maybe take a cut to play in Betis. He would probably be willing to do that. That's something to be sorted out. Ceballos, again, I think is a bit overpaid in terms of what Real Madrid gave him on that extension. He's just doesn't have that tactical ingredient. I don't see Alonso just suddenly changing him like that, even though we saw the difference that Alonso made with Granit Xhaka at Bayer Leverkusen. Not something out of the realm of possibilities. But are you really going to hope into a 27, 28, 29 years old player that's going to completely switch his career around? No, he gave us a good month. That's about it. He came back. People were expecting him to be the saint. It didn't turn out like that. That was just a team that was a little bit more willing to play, and he did fit in the mold for the month. Nothing long-term with him. A player that you move on. Angelo Stiller, again, good bench option. Don't see him starting, but great bench option. The last episode is going to tell you a little bit more about Real Madrid's on possession structure, especially deep areas where they struggle. We're going to go and explore all of these options on further episodes. So, guys, stay tuned for that. I think that here I have covered everything. Majority of the questions have been answered throughout me rambling on and on and on and going on tangents. I know that not everybody has liked the idea of Rodrygo to leave. I just think he's leaving. I think that there is movement being done there behind the scenes, but I just think that Real Madrid are refraining themselves from actually telling the public that yes, this guy is going to move. They want to keep and hold into that value as much as possible until a club will bite. Rodrygo is the one that not necessarily could be the one that's fully dependent on a pre-Club World Cup. He might be one of these transfers, even though I think that all of these clubs are moving as quickly as possible for that, the clubs involved. And he's the guy, really. He improves every single team that he joins in besides Real Madrid. So really, that should be for his own good in his career. He might want to give another shot, but we'll have to wait and see. I might get proven wrong. I haven't seen a single minute of Xabi Alonso's Real Madrid, and I'm not going to see that for almost a month. So here I'm just basing it off speculation and the film of previous work of Alonso. I'm not saying that this is the end-all, be-all, but the history is there. The way how Alonso has used his right-sided players is there, and the fact that Trent is on the team already. I don't know if you want to keep the right side really unathletic. That's why I had Nico Williams as the perfect player to be signed as a replacement, and you having money, more money longer term to work with in case you need to fill in the squad. Nico is going to have a resale value, probably not as high as Rodrygo's because I don't think the ceiling is as high, but again, it does cover up all the bases. So guys, with this, I wanted to finish off this episode. You guys now have a good picture of where Real Madrid is. Nothing else is really moving outside of the players that you're seeing on the screen right now. I gave an explanation to every single one of them. Thank you all for joining in. Appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like, leave your comments below. But actually, I just remembered, yes, I did address the fact that I wasn't the biggest fan of Alonso becoming a Real Madrid coach. I did address that, but somebody said that I had previously claimed that I had something to do with Alonso's youth team at La Real. No, I meant that when he was coaching, I was coaching too here. So I just meant that he was somebody that I was looking at. I didn't mean that I had any sort of affiliation with him, because no, I do not have any sort of affiliation with him, nor Real Sociedad, and at current point in time, neither Real Madrid. Those are pure speculations, but those are based off club politics, transfers that make sense, filling in the gaps of the squad, and trying to go all in from the get-go, because Real Madrid's gap year, you would imagine, is the year that they just had. I don't think that Alonso is coming here with any sort of leverage. He has to deliver. So we'll have to wait and see. But if you want him to deliver, you need to fill in those gaps. Therefore, this list has been made. Thank you guys again for joining in. Subscribe, like, leave your comments. Let that be a criticism. Let that be something that you enjoy, what you want to see, any ideas, things that we'll tackle. Everything is being under consideration. Everything that you guys say, the love has been absolutely incredible. We love you guys too. We are loving with the way, the direction that we are going with. A lot of things are coming, so stay tuned. But for now, I'm just gonna say, well, I hope you guys enjoy your time. That's all, really. Take care.